Hey everybody, Whitney Ellison here. I am live at Anchor Wellness with Dr. Sarah Crawford, who is joining me today for the Enneagram Entrepreneur Interviews. Dr. Crawford leads with an Enneagram Type 3, and you're my friend. What would you prefer you go by, Sarah or Dr.
Sarah's fine, yes.
Okay, so Sarah and I are going to be talking about her business, her background, and leading with the Enneagram Type 3 motivation, which, as you may remember, the Enneagram 3 is the performer or the achiever, and their motivation is for success and that external affirmation. So this is going to be a really fun conversation. How are you today?
I'm fine. I'm fine. I am doing fine. I've actually had a morning that I get to put my thoughts together. So it hasn't been chaotic, which is
That's
taboo.
awesome for a Monday. Yeah, that's really great.
Yeah.
So you guys should know her facility is beautiful. We're in Kenwood in Cincinnati, and the natural light is gorgeous in here. She has just got some amazing space. So it feels really good to be in here right now, and hopefully that's reflecting in our conversation. So Sarah, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so Sarah Crawford, I'm a physical therapist by trade, have been practicing for 10 years. I'm born and raised in Cincinnati, went to school at the University of Miami in South Florida, never anticipated coming back to Cincinnati, but I lucked out with my first job practicing in a clinic with a lot of other senior therapists, and I learned a ton. Told the guy I was working for I'd stay for 2 years. Max, I was going back to Florida, got the opportunity to go away to Chicago, and he asked me to help kind of run the practice with him. So I got a ton of experience in managing a practice.
And that was here in Cincy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, but kept just running into dead ends with insurance-based care. Having insurance dictate what we could do based off of what they would reimburse us. And so about 7 years ago, left that practice, went to a non-traditional practice where we were out of network, and helped build that practice. And we went from a team of 2 to a team of 12 by the time I left. Wow. And it was great, and kept learning things along the way in terms of working with teammates and building in a space that was somewhat new, especially in Cincinnati. When we were doing out-of-network care 7 years ago, it was very taboo. Uh-huh. There wasn't a PT on every corner.
That makes sense.
And so we were one of the first teams to be doing it. There were a handful of therapists that were out on their own, but we were the first team, and then built it to be a more dynamic practice. And then started Anchor in 2019, hoping that there were other providers like me in the health and wellness space that didn't want to be alone, that felt like they could do their job differently if in a different setting, that they could provide better care, more efficient, more effective care in a different location, but didn't want to be by themselves, a lone soldier who believed in collaborative care. And so that's how the Anchor Wellness Center came to be. So the Anchor Wellness Center is an integrated healthcare collaborative in which we bring like-minded health and wellness providers into the same space to provide client-centric care and empower individuals and consumers of health and wellness services to take their journey into their own hands. We're in the passenger seat, they're the drivers, we just happen to know a little bit of information, and we help guide them through the process, but inherently it's theirs.
That's really cool. So there's a couple of things that stood out to me that I want to talk about. First is the irony that you wanted to go back to Miami, and then you quite literally dropped an anchor in Cincinnati. that actually happened. Yeah. Second though really is you opened the center, you said, in 2019. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, we're going to get into Enneagram stuff in a minute, but that's a story because the pandemic hit obviously in early 2020.
Later,
right. So tell me about that journey. What did that look like?
Ooh, what didn't it look like? I've been fortunate to be practicing for 10 years, and I had a good amount of rapport with clients. So we pivoted super quickly and went virtual, which was actually very fun. I've been a hands-on therapist, and so the ability to help people through the computer was actually really challenging for my brain. But the path process of growing this business has been challenged because a lot of providers have taken their businesses virtual.
Yeah.
And this is a business in which it's an on-site business. It's a brick and mortar. And I think that health and wellness, you're always, all the providers I talk to, you're always going to pick up more being in the same space with somebody than you would over the screen, through a screen. You know, you pick up on some of those mannerisms when they kind of back away when you ask them a difficult question that you don't always see.
Yeah.
And so it's been challenging because there have been things I never thought I would deal with, and especially expanding this business during the pandemic. That's just miraculous. Sort of a throw it up in the air and hope it lands type decision. It was one of those choices where the opportunity to move into the space became available because of the pandemic, but I didn't want to miss it because of the pandemic.
Right.
So that was one of those calculated risks that we're betting on.
Wow, that's incredible. So, all right, so we've talked a little bit about your background. So let's talk about your Enneagram type, and really how long you've kind of been working with it, what's your journey looked like, and how you're feeling about it so far.
Okay. So my Enneagram journey is very short. When did we talk?
Gosh, we connected.
A few months ago.
Yeah, a few months ago.
Beginning of the year and end of last year. I've known about the Enneagram my entire life. I have been invited to many Enneagram workshops, but I dove into Strength Finder a long time ago and loved it. And what I like about Strength Finder is that it's, your strengths are your strengths, your weaknesses are your weaknesses. Your weaknesses are never going to be as strong as your strengths. So put yourself into a place where you can excel.
Sure.
And
which is a great thing for a type 3 to say, by the way.
It's so type 3. It's so type 3.
But it's true.
It's true.
There's a lot of truth to that.
And my strengths on Strength Finder are achiever, adaptability, strategic. Oh my gosh, there's 3 A's.
Is woo one of them?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't have that.
Okay. Winning others over. Different than woo woo.
But they're very black and white. They're detail oriented. They're process based and they're goal based. And so I've always sort of shunned the Enneagram, but then in the last year, it seems like it's just coming up all the time. It's like liking bourbon.
Yeah.
It's something.
Right now.
It is. It's something to talk about.
Yeah.
And it's funny as I've dove into it, it's holy, that is me, to a T. And it's totally thrown me off kilter because I'm now to a place I think before where I've never wanted to accept weaknesses. I've always wanted to just scoop those out of the way. Let's just talk about how I'm an achiever. And now I'm in a place where I'm really interested in growing those weaknesses or those gentler points that, and being able to learn how to work with them as opposed to just avoiding them.
Well, and the interesting thing is, and I think this is why the Enneagram is so disruptive, is because it's about motivation, and the motivation is what really drives why we do the things that we do. And so when you think about it in terms of strengths and opportunities for each type, they actually come from the same seed, right? So what makes you great can also be your biggest downfall, and that's the discomfort of it, but that's where the growth happens.
Right.
So I love that. And another part that I'd like to add that just goes back to my philosophy that really understanding the Enneagram from a holistic standpoint is much more valuable than taking a typing test or somebody telling you your type, and that is that you have in the past had people tell you what type you are, just based on observing behaviors, and it wasn't her type.
Right.
And so if you fall into that can really stink because you're still not coming from a place of authenticity, and now you're trying to piece together a story about yourself that isn't true. So I love that you wanted to really dismantle this process it, and not do it from a place of take the test, do the things. It was more of, okay, help me understand this. How do I really get to the nitty gritty of what I am? What my motivation is and why. And so it does. Like, what did you call it? She called me a wrecking ball. Am I the wrecking ball or is the Enneagram? Or both. Yeah, okay, that's fine. That's, type 8. That can happen sometimes. But the point being, though, it really drives a lot of self-awareness, right?
Yeah. No, it's a wrecking ball in all the right ways, and probably a way in which I wouldn't have been welcome to it, a year and a half ago.
Why?
Entrepreneurship is a vulnerable place, and I don't think people ever associate that when they're deciding to get into it.
Yeah.
People get into it because they think they have a skill or a product that somebody else wants. But they don't think about the behind the scenes and the behind the curtain and behind the face that goes into putting that skill or service or product out there.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you lead to serve in whatever capacity it is, but at the forefront are just all your strengths. But it's not like you get to just leave the other garbage in another room. So it comes with you, and that was the part. I had previously participated in running 2 other businesses, and I got into this like, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing. This is great. This is easy. Those people were really lacking. And now I'm here, and I'm like, oh shit, no wonder. It's a total. Like, if you want to get in touch with yourself, start a business.
Yeah, no doubt. Oh my gosh, the true words were never spoken, right?
It's a rude awakening to go to sleep with your thoughts and then not all be about how awesome you are.
Yeah. Yes.
It's fact, and that never happened to me before 2019.
Yeah.
Not on the consistency at which it happens now.
Well, because you're used to that performance level gratification, and when you work for somebody else and you're in a reward-based system, it's easy to get that external affirmation. And for a type 3 especially, as our friend Stevie has said before, she's a type 3, she's insatiable. It hits like the satisfaction, the accomplishment hits, and then she wants the next thing, and that's really important. That's that motivation that comes into play.
Which is probably why I'm a physical therapist.
Yeah.
I get that instant gratification every 30 minutes.
That's awesome.
Every time a patient leaves and they feel better, it's like, oh, look at me.
That's great. No, but see, and that is so good that you recognize that and identified that, and there's nothing wrong with that because your patients are getting excellent care and getting what they pay for, and so it's kind of a circular thing. So that's fantastic. I think where the 3s really get into a space that's challenging is when they 3s tend to set their emotions aside. Even though they come from the heart center, their biggest area of work is the heart center because they're insatiable and unstoppable and constantly doing and moving and working. Emotions slow you down, and that's one of those can't be bothered is what the language I think of. And I can relate to that as an 8 as well. I'm a body type, but emotions are my biggest area of opportunity too. So what happens is the 3s go, and then they get to a point where they're so advanced in doing and going that they've completely detached from who they actually are.
Yeah, and we build this wall to that, and it's palpable to the people you're around too. And I've seen that in building this business and in businesses in the past, and that there's this like confidence level that comes with leading with a 3 motivation, but at the same time it's almost as though you're impenetrable. And that you're insensitive, and that couldn't be more true. It's just that I'm not as attached to it, and that's not the first thing I think. Like, I'm a doer. Like, let's do it, we'll deal with the rest later. And then by later, I'm already on to the next thing.
Right.
But there's this, I think one of the downsides I've seen of being in this role as a 3 is that I'm so process based and so like forward moving, that I forget to recognize that everybody else isn't there with me,
Mm-hmm.
and some people are still figuring it out.
Yep.
I'm impatient.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'm learning how to let people come to things on their own timeline,
Mm-hmm.
and that doesn't have to be the same speed as me.
Yep. I think that's, again, like when you go to the 3, the 7, and the 8, those are the aggressive personality types. We're the ones that need to slow down the most.
Yeah.
And because we're constantly doing for different reasons, and slowing down is uncomfortable for all 3 of those types,
Mm-hmm.
because then we have to sit
Yes.
with our emotions.
Yes. And what does that even mean?
Right.
And what is it? You know, like I don't understand. Like for how long?
Yes.
Right. Like is
Because
this
I got
5
stuff
minutes
to do.
good?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And for 7s, it's FOMO. For 8s, it's just about practicality, and for 3s, it's about performance.
And efficiency.
Right? Yeah.
Like I could be doing a lot.
Yeah.
I was laying in bed. We traveled over the weekend, and I was laying in bed. My 2 girls fell asleep with me yesterday when we got home, and they're both like conked out. And I'm like, I could be doing so much right now. And then my second thought was, but enjoy this. Like your kids aren't gonna lay with you forever. But it was like this constant like tug and pull of my 2 heads, of like this head that's trying to grow and develop,
Mm-hmm.
and then this other head that's done some things the same way that my
Yeah.
whole life. And it's a weird space to be, and literally I just was like, all right, they'll be awake in 60 minutes. Just enjoy it for 60 minutes. But it's that I've always referred to myself as this like efficiency queen.
Yeah.
My husband's like, you know, like going around the block and turning here versus there really isn't any different. I'm like, yes, it is. You know, like it's the story of my life. It really does. I like to think that I am not require other people do the things the same way as me, but I think that's inherently wrong. Like I think I do. I just have not been willing to admit it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so it's more of like that instinctual need for people to do it your way.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and again, relatable, right? Because
Yes.
I can understand what you're saying by that. And then when they don't, do you think that they feel the dissatisfaction that
Yes.
you might feel? Like,
Yes.
does that emit?
Oh
from you?
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I've, you know, always thought that wasn't true, but I think it's been brought to my attention that it is true.
But that's okay, right? Because again, we go into that shadow space,
Mm-hmm.
you know, where our challenges are, and we develop the self-awareness. And this is the opportunity. Another great thing about the Enneagram and knowing the 9 types and knowing it holistically is the reminder or the new discovery that not everybody thinks the way that we do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so even that in and of itself is groundbreaking.
For sure. I think that's been, you know, since we started this journey, I'm by no means good at it, but at least there's like this little ticker of a thought in my background that's like, okay, they're not thinking the same way. They're not, like, that's not problem solution. You know,
Yeah.
like these people, not everyone's like you.
Yeah. That's called empathy.
Yes.
You're doing good.
And I've had
love
that
it.
in my physical
Sure.
therapy
Yeah,
practice.
yeah.
I've just never had it on the business side.
In the context
That-
of
like
leadership,
yes.
like
yes.
with peers.
Yes.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I've had it that like that's a friend of mine. A message. She was doing this silly thing on Instagram the other day, and it was like, "What are the top 3 things you love about yourself?" And I wrote back that I'm like goal based, something else, and empathetic. Which like I think of that as me, like Sarah Crawford as a human,
Yeah.
and especially as a physical therapist. But I don't think I've been empathetic as a leader.
Well, but again, that's a great discovery, because not only is there self-awareness now and the development of empathy, but there's grace for yourself. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, that's okay that you haven't been. It's not because you weren't well intended.
Mm-hmm.
It's because we're conditioned in certain ways. And again, the beauty of the Enneagram and discovering what motivates us, why we do the things we do. Like, as children, when the world started getting to us, we were conditioned with these defense mechanisms and with these reasons for doing what we did. To protect ourselves, or in our minds to protect ourselves, and that developed the brain paths and behaviors and instincts that we have now.
Yeah.
So we're just working on dismantling those and recognizing when to use them to our advantage and when we need to let them go.
Yeah, I think there is definitely this assumption that 3s can be self-centered, and it like literally couldn't be further from the truth, at least in the way that I lead.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like I'm pouring, especially with this business.
Yeah.
You know, this business is to bring like-minded people together to lessen their burden.
Yeah.
So my value, my mission behind this business is so empathetic.
Yeah.
But I think that at the same time, you know, you're running a business, right? Like there's dollars and cents and pluses and minuses. And that's all like very matter of fact to me.
Yeah.
And so that matter of fact mentality of like business administration applied into a world that's so empathy driven.
Yes.
And so service based,
Yep.
so much so giving. There's this shell that makes it appear as though, you know, like people who lead with more 3 motivation can be selfish.
Yeah, I think there is, but it's almost, there is, and that also actually applies to 7s. There's an appearance of that with 7s as well. But like with the 3, I think it's really more about the underlying motivation that was developed, that your worthiness is somehow tied to external factors.
Right.
And so that can come off looking selfish when in fact it's not. It's the 3 looking for love. Like it's the 3 looking for that affirmation because they haven't been able to mine that from within.
Right.
And so there's that instinct coming because of the worthiness and where it's tied. And that also is why the 3s are part of the heart center of intelligence, because it's all about that self-worth being tied to external factors.
Right.
And you know, the 3s, the 2, 3, and 4 are the heart center of intelligence, which means that they respond to stimuli emotionally before thought or impulse, which is head or body. Now with 3s, they set their emotions aside. So even though you may respond to stimuli emotionally, nobody's ever going to know it.
Right, exactly.
Right? And so that's why their biggest area of work is also the heart space. So it's beautiful to understand and unpack. Because when you do, you realize, like, you built this business. You're servicing not only your clients, but you're providing jobs, you know? And so all of those things are a beautiful affirmation that came from within, you know? So running a business, it's definitely got its challenges, especially when you have people that work for or with you.
Yep.
That takes it to a whole nother level, one that I'm not sure I ever want to tie myself to as an 8. With my tendency to need to control, maybe it's best. But anyway, so all that to say, like, although it may appear as selfish to those watching that know and love 3s, it's not selfish. It's the need for finding that worthiness and that love and that affirmation through the external.
True. Yeah.
So don't be so hard on yourself.
It's funny. I was talking about that earlier today, and when people ask me what I feel, I can't say. Like, that's how dissociated I am. I feel something, and I'll cry like on the drop of the dime. Like you know it. Like the sessions we did, I'm crying like that. I had a call with my teacher's daughter, my daughter's teacher, not the other way around. Last week, and she's telling me about, you know, how great my daughter's doing, and then some areas, and I'm like literally on the verge of tears. Like, I'm always on the verge of tears, but I can't ever describe why or what it is.
It's because people see you. They're
Right.
seeing you.
Yes.
And that breaks you wide open.
Wide open.
Because it's
It
hard
is.
for a 3.
Yes.
You know?
It is. It's a super vulnerable place. This, and, you know, tie in COVID,
Oh, gosh.
tie in starting a business, tie in being a mom of young kids, tie in being a wife, a daughter, a sister, like all the roles.
Yeah.
And not that anybody else has any less roles. It's just a lot.
Yeah.
And your roles in all of those boxes are different. You know, they're same, but they're different. And, you know, turning one off and another on, for me, what I have found is like those extremes, like those ups and downs between personal life, work life, family life, friend, social life. You know, you get these super highs and then these super lows, and that's for me the super uncomfortable part.
Yeah.
I'm like good if something's pretty steady.
Yeah.
And I
sense.
think that ties back into, you know, that detachment from feelings and that, you know, validation with external input. And because those highs and lows, the highs are great, but the lows are not great.
Right.
And I don't like to like be there.
And they slow you down.
And they slow me down, but then that spike back up, it's like, yes, but then as soon as you get up there, like it's coming back. So it's, that's the other place where I've been super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Is like these ups and downs.
And that's the place where you have to sit with
Yeah.
more to like unpack that.
Mm-hmm.
So what you want to get to, what all of us want to get to, because we all have those different peaks and valleys depending on how we think. What we want to get to is where we can neutralize the high highs and the low lows to
Yes.
where we're getting to a more steady frequency that we can process,
Yes.
and that's my journey too, for sure. So that's really great. So let's talk a minute. Let's see here. I did want to ask you, this is a specific trait that 3s are often stereotyped about, and I wanted to see what your thoughts are on this. 3s are often stereotyped as being workaholics. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that? What does that narrative look like for you?
It's funny. I would not call myself a workaholic, but I think that's evolved. I think I'm always thinking about work.
Uh-huh.
Like that's on my mind 24/7. But I think as I've grown and I've experienced burnout in the past, I've gotten to a place where I personally, I have not a hard set rule, but a firm rule where I don't work on the weekends.
That's great. You hear that, other 3s?
And I
Good
don't,
boundaries.
and that's not true all the time, but with running this business, I work more than full time, and I'm not with my kids a lot, and I still want to have a relationship with my children. And I work in this space. I work in the health and wellness space where I'm telling people find balance and stuff. So I follow my own rules there, but that's definitely come a time, and that ebbs and flows. I mean, there are weekends. 2 weekends ago, I didn't have my kids for the weekend. They spent the weekend with their grandparents, and I worked all weekend.
Oh gosh,
it was lovely.
Really?
Yeah, it was. That's great.
That's a 3 thing to say, because I'm like, if I don't have my kids, I got Netflix, I got workouts planned, I got a bottle of wine.
Yeah. No, my husband's like, when do we get to get rid of our kids and not go to your office? Which is our ongoing joke. Right?
That's hilarious.
But when I'm with my kids, I really do try and be with my kids, and that was part of my Enneagram journey. That was part of why I wanted to dive into this, because for some reason having children really woke me up.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It woke me up to generational behavior that I've acquired. It woke me up to places that I wanted to be different, places that I really wanted, things I wanted to pass on to my kids. I grew up with, my mom is one of 6 girls, and my grandmother worked full-time as a nurse, and my grandfather worked full-time as a teacher and coach. And that was progressive. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up, and I think this is part of my 3, standing up for myself. Yeah. And pushing boundaries, and being told when I was wrong, or telling somebody when I was wrong. Mm-hmm. And there's things about that were great. I became really, really independent very early. Yep. But at the same time, I also started putting up my wall really quickly. Where if you wronged me, you were out. Yep.
It's very similar to 8 tendencies too. Yeah, for sure.
And so I wanted to break down some of those habits. That I had learned by observation, so that I didn't pass those on to my kids. Mm-hmm. And then this Enneagram journey has just been literally, as I read about it and as I study it, I'm like, what am I doing to my kids?
Me too. All the time.
My efficiency mind. Am I creating these compulsive children who can't be in a mess? So a lot of my journey really goes back to my kids, and so that workaholic thing, I want my kids to have a good work ethic. Mm-hmm. I learned a really solid work ethic from my parents, but I also don't want them to attach their value to their work like I do.
That's brilliant. Well, and regarding your childhood, one of the things you told me that I think is really interesting and often a characteristic of 3s is you were an athlete, right? Mm-hmm. A swimmer. Mm-hmm. You are an athlete, but at the time you were a competitive swimmer, right?
Yes, that's arguable.
So
I'm still not.
But you had that sport also providing that external affirmation, right?
Yeah, that's a sport that I think teaches a lot of self-discipline. You have to choose to move your arms. Yeah. You have to go. And it's an individual sport wrapped inside a team sport. But it was intense for me from the age of 5 to 15. And I do think that like those were formative years for who I am today, no question about it. And there's a lot of, like, I remember not getting entered into a meet. And at the time, my parents were like, oh, it's because we don't donate to the team, right? And so they sent me in there at like 8 years old to make my claim to my coach. And my coach was probably just like, I forgot, like, But like in my mind, like I became this like, warrior for myself to like stand up for that injustice. And it was just like an error.
But okay, so that's great though. And what I love about what you just said was it's an individual sport wrapped up in a team. And often I see that with 3 leadership. There's that individual sport for that person, but it's within the team. When 3s are in stress, they move into 9. And I talked to Stevie about this. We call it the ostrich. They just head in the same, like, and not in the good, like, but that's when they move into the shadow side of the 9. If they move into the good side of the 9 in stress, they're resting and being still, okay? And that's great. But when 3s are in support, they move into the 6. The 6s are great team players. 3s in support that move into the 6 are excellent team players and team leaders from within the arena. So when you describe that sport of swimming with the individual sport within the team sport, that really was very illustrative of exactly how a 3 leads.
Yep, it's true, and it's I think the choice to even start Anchor in and of itself showed that I was ready to develop, because one of those other areas where 3s really get to grow is when they collaborate.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I'm so damn competitive, but I'm forcing myself into this world of letting other people lead.
So good.
And it's actually really lovely.
Yeah.
Like, it's great. It's like, oh, there are other people who do things like me, and feel the same way and value the same thing, and they've got a different way of getting there, but it's been so refreshing. And so I look forward to that, but I do think that, like, I'm in your 7 Universal Laws workshop, and I've always believed that things happen for a reason, and that there's just part of it is just kind of showing up.
Yeah.
And so, I look at like where I am today as a whole, and I just feel like there had to have been a greater sense to this. Mm-hmm. That I had to have, that it was going to happen, right? That I started this business, and that I would dive into the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, and then be refreshingly joined by this rude awakening of all of my shortcomings, and then ultimately want to address them.
I love it.
Like all of this.
You invited it.
Yeah. And then like throw in a pandemic.
Yeah.
Why
not?
I
I guess we all collectively invited that, because it sure didn't skip over anybody. No. Holy cow. But yeah, no, that's a beautiful thing to say. And I think that is true. When we are in a space of discomfort or learning, we invite that into our lives.
Yeah.
And it's powerful when we realize that. And we do it often subconsciously. And typically it's not always fun, but it's always the wisdom that comes out of the other side if we're paying attention is powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I think I'm coming to a place of recognizing that failure is just an experience.
Yes.
It's not a...
Good job, 3.
Yeah. I mean,
it's
going to take me some time to get all the way there. But, that failure's okay.
Yeah.
And that has never been, my forte.
Yeah.
But I've been behind the scenes long enough in business to know that there's always, for every push there's a pull, for every pull there's a push. And so I've been in this enough to know that the seasons change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, it's not always going to be where it is today,
mm-hmm.
good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I feel fortunate to have had that experience and know that that the momentum shifts happen.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome, and that's very wise. Okay, well, thank you. That's very helpful. I do also see a few 3s that joined us on here, so I'm loving that they're watching this.
Me too. Tell me who you are so I can talk to you.
So we've got, right now we only have 1 viewer, but they come and go and flow. So there's Nori on there. She's a 2. A life postpartum. Do you know her, Lisa?
We've recently chatted.
Excuse me. So Lisa's a 3, and she interviewed earlier.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then there's a few guests that I only know through Instagram that are on right now too. So anyway, hello to everybody, and thanks for letting us say hi toward the end of the dialogue because we were having a really good conversation. So
it's so typical. I was like, let's get to work.
Hey man,
what do you want to talk about?
You get a 3 and an 8 together, and a lot gets done in a very short amount of time. So I totally get that. All right, so would you please share one specific... Oh, wait, let's see. FLRS Coaching says a 1 here. That's Mindy?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. So is Mindy your friend?
Yeah, well, Mindy and I are meeting this week.
Hey, Mindy. Thanks for commenting. So Mindy's a 1. That's awesome. Mindy, I'm always looking for 1s to interview. So
Mindy, you would be great at this.
They're kind of hard to find because they want it to be perfect, and they're scared it's not going to be. So anyway, all right. So what's one specific thing about your business that you'd love for people to know?
The one specific thing. I think the one specific thing is that we are not your cookie cutter healthcare clinic. We are patient driven, client centric, and I think that's weird in medicine and in healthcare because you go to the doctor, you've got a problem, you want a solution. And I think what we serve in whether it's from the medical side or the movement side, is for you to lead. Mm-hmm. Most people know what their problem is, right? They don't always know what's causing it, but they know what their problem is and they know what they want to do. Mm-hmm. So if you're told, if you go to the doctor, you have high blood pressure, and the doctor says, take this. Mm-hmm. Before that doctor even told you that, you knew whether or not you wanted to take medication.
Right.
The difference is that we're going to hear that.
Okay, all right.
So I think, and that's across the board of all of our providers. You know, we are a place for people who want to be active participants in their care.
So great. Refreshing is what that is.
And we want you to lead because the more you want to lead, the better you're going to get. And so we just happen to know a little bit of information. And so, you know, we'll guide you through the process. And we've got clinical experience and we've got science behind us. But at the end of the day, we're listening to what you want and we're going to help you get there.
That's awesome.
And so if that's a medication-free lifestyle, if that's exercising daily, if that's being vegan, if that's eating Wendy's, like we're going to work with you to figure out how to accomplish the goals you want, but around the way that you want to live. You know, you've got to be willing to accept the help. But you also have to want it, and so we're not prescription based.
That's great, and even though you are out of network, your HSA still qualifies for care. So for people that are interested in learning more about Anchor, understand that you can still use your HSA set aside to support you in services from here. Yeah,
and it's usually more cost effective, to be honest with you. It sounds scary up front, but healthcare costs are through the roof right now. And a lot of people, especially in this region, because of the consortiums of care, have these high deductible plans. And so
almost everybody.
Yeah. And so, you know, you're paying for what you get here, and it's reimbursable by insurance from out of network benefits, but you also, it's not, you won't come to physical therapy 2 to 3 times a week for 8 to 12 weeks. Yeah. That has never happened in this office. We see most people for acute injuries 4 to 6 times. So, you know, whereas if your doctor writes you a prescription to go to PT, it says 2 to 3 times for 4 to 6 weeks. And it's just not necessary. And again, with our goal is to give you the least amount of information necessary to have your best life.
Yeah,
right.
I love it.
And so, you know, we're going to do a little bit of the skilled care here, and that's again across the continuum of providers. But we give you the work. Like, it's on you because you have to sustain it. Like, we've got a little bit of information to help push you in the right direction, but then it's on you to maintain it.
Yep, I love that. And so tell me, I know you have physical therapy, you've got Pilates, not only for physical therapy, but also for exercise, right?
Yep.
What other offerings are here?
So we have physical therapy, including women's health, physical therapy, pelvic health PT. We have nutritional therapy, health coaching, so kind of health and lifestyle coaching, and then clinical Pilates and yoga therapy. And we have group classes in our Pilates and yoga. The yoga is usually kind of pop-ups, and we've got some really exciting yoga offerings coming up in the next couple months. Yeah.
Anything you can share right now, or is it still in the works?
It's still in the works, but it's kind of training based.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah. But our, all of our movement services are therapeutically based. So, you will leave having learned something about your body, what it can do, what it should feel like, how it can perform. We're breaking down these ideas of our bodies being fragile. And so, but it's think of doing PT and Pilates kind of at the same time, or yoga and PT at the same time.
Cool.
So it's a nice mixture. It's still a great workout. My classes tend to be a little challenging, but maybe that's me getting my 3 energy out.
Yep.
But yeah, those are.
If I can do this, you can do this.
Yes, exactly. And then we're always looking to expand our internal network. So we are looking to add massage therapy, and we're looking to add medical in terms of either an MD or DO or NP.
Cool.
And really anybody who kind of comes our way that meets our mission and values. So that's how we're growing.
That's really excited. And you service men and women.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be very clear that it's great that you offer the pelvic health. But this place is bustling with both men and women. All are welcome, or whatever you identify as or don't identify as. It's for anyone. Mm-hmm. So anyway, just want to make sure that people know.
Yeah, no. And a lot of men need pelvic health therapy as well.
I'm sure. They do have pelvises too.
They
do.
Yeah, believe it or not. Surprisingly.
All right. Well, where can people find you?
So we're on Instagram, Anchor Wellness Cincy. Our website is anchorcincy.com. And you can always email us info@anchorcincy.com.
Awesome. Well, guys, this is Dr. Sarah Crawford, leads with a type 3. And I thank you very much for being on today. This was a great conversation. And thank you, everybody that watched and joined us. And have a wonderful week.
Bye.